You're listening to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, well, everybody, I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And as usual, we are the hosts. We are your host for this show. I'll get it. I got it.
Got it.
We're good. And we are not only reviewing Visions, Season 3, or Volume 3, Episode 4 tonight, but in 3 days, this Wednesday, will be our annual, that's right, our annual pre-Thanksgiving special episode that we always do, where we live stream Wednesday, 8 o'clock. And this time, we're actually going to be talking about our favorite scene from each of the 9 saga films.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll have a special guest. Dave Kazi was usually the one that we would get. You know, for years he did it. Last year, he couldn't do it. So we got, our wonderful David. Plus, we owed him anyway because at his membership level that he was paying for, you get like, you can co-host a show or whatever. Well, it looks like Dave Kazi can't do it this year either. So we're hoping that we can get David to be the third host. So that should actually be fun. We always have a lot of fun. Actually, the pre-Thanksgiving live stream that we always do, it's one of my favorites to do of the whole year, hands down. So, that should be good. And then, but tonight we're doing Visions, right? So I got to say, I have to say this. Comments are coming through. I see that Ted. All right, well, Ted basically said it's going to be a fun special episode. Looking forward to it, guys. Going to set an alarm. All right. That's good. It should be fun. Like I said, it's always a blast to do those. But all right, getting into episode 4 of Visions. I have to say, man, this might actually be my favorite episode of not just this season, but like the entire series.
I figured you would.
Yeah, I mean, this one actually, to me, it had, again, and this seems to be the theme for this season, where you can actually understand the episodes, the context of the episodes and everything. But I mean, there was like a lot of really cool drama. I thought the story was really good. I thought it was executed really well. One of the things that you see in a lot of these Japanese anime things is they tend to be a little bit silly at times. I didn't really find there were any like silly moments, nothing that took me out of it. I really liked the whole split personality of the droid thing. That's something that we've never really seen in Star Wars before. I mean, I guess the closest you could say would be like in The Rise of Skywalker when, C-3PO, they like tapped into him and gave him the Sith eyes and
oh yeah.
Did that because he couldn't interpret like Sith writings or something. But yeah, I mean, I just thought that, overall, I mean, it was more of a complex storyline than what we've gotten in previous episodes. And I really found myself going, you know what? I could actually probably watch an entire series with these two characters. So, that alone. But now we find out what you thought.
Well, I mean, I will echo this. This was a really good episode. I did enjoy it. I really thought the story was really good. And this is something that I wish would happen more so with live action, quite honestly. Like, if this was a live action story,
right?
Like, I'll be all about it. I mean, I could really picture this as a live action thing. And we've seen stuff, of course, like in The Mandalorian. And it's kind of what it kind of reminds me of The Mandalorian a little bit, in a way. Especially when he had season 1, when he had that reprogrammed IG-88 droid that was helping him out and stuff.
Right.
It's just, or we've seen it where K2SO was once an Imperial droid, been reprogrammed, and now he's helping the good guys. So Now, granted, with the split personality thing, that's a different twist. And the kind of fact that one of the things I thought it was hilarious was that he let out the Wilhelm scream. So,
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the thing that
I
was
thought
funny about
that
it,
was funny.
and it's not just a split personality thing, it's the fact that they put an assassin droid personality in a medical droid. Like, I
Yeah,
thought that was what a unique
exactly.
combination that is.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I'm gonna pretty much maim you or kill you, but I'm gonna tell you how to fix yourself at the same time. Like, oh, just in case put this type of gauze on and you'll be fine.
Yeah, now Ted had basically earlier said, "Hey guys, is the Force with y'all tonight?" And I think what he's talking about maybe might be, did we enjoy the episode? Did we? And so yeah, clearly we did. I mean, when you really started to get into this, the other thing that it reminded me of a little bit was Solo, because that main industrialist guy kind of
Oh
had a
yeah,
little bit of that
Beckett,
well, not just Beckett, but even oh, what's his face? Drayden
Drayton Voss.
yes. It was it kind of had that whole vibe a little bit. Even down to where he had some artifacts and things in his office or whatever, and just he had this like calm demeanor. I mean, I actually really enjoyed his character because he was
Yeah,
like super benevolent at first, and you could tell, like you could tell a little bit that they were setting this up. Especially the
yeah,
way when the little girl came in to get them their tea or whatever, and it's kind of like, it's like, oh yeah, we pay them really well and they're happy to be here and all that, and it's like, I don't know, man, she doesn't look all that happy to be there. Now, I didn't expect them to do that whole like sister connection thing, but I mean, you can even say another part of it too, and this is a theme that comes up constantly in Star Wars to varying degrees of success, where there's always like, you know, whether it's Qui-Gon freeing Anakin, whether it's L3 trying to free those other droids and, in that mine,
hmm
whether it's, there's always, I mean, even in The Rise of Skywalker, it's kind of like Rose, or I think it was Rose, right? That wanted to free those kids or whatever on Canto Bight.
yeah,
So, I mean, there's always that theme, right? Where there's an oppressed group and one of the heroes basically wants to free them. But this was done in a really unique way, I thought. I mean, because it was so cool the way that I'm trying to remember what his name was. Oh, Jinsim.
Jin.
Yeah. So Jinsim's character was really cool because he really sold that whole, benevolent uh, industrialist or whatever
Yeah, he
really
kind of
well.
reminds you. Yeah, he almost had very Palpatine
Hmm.
type vibes. Also reminds me of man, it was during the Clone Wars. Remember that one banking clan it was that one guy who was friends with Padme? That he kind
Oh
of went.
yeah,
I
yeah,
can't remember
yeah.
his name, but he
I know.
was.
I don't
Look,
either.
there's so many episodes on that show, but he's part of the banking clan, and he eventually, like, we saw that he was kind of in on the whole, I guess, separatist thing. Like, he was really kind of siding with them, but he was kind of trying to sway Padme, but he kind of had to get her on
Hmm.
his side. So, yeah, I mean, that theme runs a lot in Star Wars, and I think you can always play it a different way. And I think each one of those characters, with you, whether it's a Beckett, whether it's, you know, um, Palpatine, those characters who come off one way, and then you find out that they're completely the other. And those are always fun because it's like you really want to love them. And then it's like you get your heart broken, and that's really a fun ride sometimes to go on.
Well, even to that effect, the droid IVA-4,
Hmm.
he almost seemed like he was gonna do a little bit of a turn there towards the end.
Yeah.
Like he was gonna betray her, and then of course he ended up sort of pulling a Han Solo, and, and coming back. Ted says, "Oh, you already said that. Hold on, let me get this. Let me get this up here." He says, this reminded me of the serious anime action adventures of the 80s and 90s. And that exactly. I mean, see, this is the kind of anime that I had always watched. Because when I actually started watching anime, it was my friend that got me into it. It was actually in the early 90s that I was heavily exposed to it and had seen a bunch of stuff. So obviously, a lot of that came from the 80s and early 90s. And then I sort of lost track of it. And I always thought that that was the time period where it was really at its best. And
Mm-hmm.
when new projects come out that mirror that type of storytelling, that's when I become really interested. And that's what this was doing. Where again, there's nothing, no real silliness or anything like that. I mean, there's a lot of really good themes. I could almost see this playing out, well, kind of like you said, actually, it's like a Mandalorian episode.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they easily could have done that, right? Because I mean, you did have this one bounty hunter, and of course, she even was a really interesting character as a bounty hunter too. Because on one hand, she's, look, we got this client, this is what the client wants, this is what they're paying for. You don't get too deep into it. And Din was sort of the same way, where
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like, look, if you start nosing around too much, you might be like, oh, I can't do this. It's better to just, keep it business. Don't try to get too involved. Don't worry too much about what they're doing. And
Yeah.
then it won't, prick the little moral compass, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I was going to bring up next is that the moral compass dilemma is always, a fascinating thing because the job itself as a bounty hunter is um, very difficult because you have a job to do, and it's almost kind of like in a way of being an attorney. And if you have a client that you know is guilty of the crime,
Yep.
you still have to fight for them to.
Yeah, you got to
And
give them a defense.
and really, like
Like,
give them a really good
yeah.
defense. And like if it were me, like I want to throw a book at this guy too, but I can't do that because that's not what you hired me for.
Well, not only that, but you're not. It's like not only can you not throw the book at them, you got to come up with the defense. Like you might just
Mm-hmm.
test this person and want to give them the chair yourself,
Exactly.
but you can't because they're
Right.
entitled to a defense, and you can't just throw the
And-
game, as it were. You got to really, because if you do, you could get disbarred for that.
Well, not only that, but also, like and to your point, you get disbarred. Like I said, your reputation just gets slung through the mud because now, no one wants to hire you. So
Yeah.
it's a very complex and sometimes convoluted job in a way because you really have to detach from everything. You just have to focus. Okay, well, what is the job?
Well, it's
And
not
don't
only
worry about
that.
anything else.
There's another element of it too, and this is one of the things that makes bounty hunters so fascinating. It's really dependent on who they're working for, right? Who the client is. Because on one hand, the idea is that they could do some things that law enforcement can't.
Yep.
Primarily, it's more like they can focus on, one perpetrator, let's say. Because it's kind of like, okay, this guy skipped bail, whatever.
Mhm.
Not, of course, we're talking kind of earthly. But I mean, it works even in the Star Wars universe too, right? A lot of
Yep.
times you have the Republic or somebody, it's like, listen, we got to have this mission. We got to get this thing done, but it kind of has to be outside the military, not necessarily for a legalistic reason, but really more because of resources. They might not be able to put, the Republic soldiers or, whatever, even the Jedi, if you're talking about like in the prequel era or whatever. It's like, we need to just give this to a bounty hunter. Okay, well, in
Mhm.
that case, the bounty hunter's working on the side of the law,
Yep.
or they're working for a good guy. Or even if it's not like a law type of a thing, maybe it's like there's like a bunch of pirates or something that's overtaking a town. Kind of like what we saw in The Mandalorian, actually.
Mhm.
Well, now the bounty hunter's a good guy, right? He's running these guys out. But you can easily flip the script, and if the client is hiring them to do something a little shady, that's the idea. It's kind of like bounty hunters are more neutral. They're neither good nor bad. It just depends on the job on which side they fall. And so intrinsically, they're always going to be interesting, somewhat fascinating characters because of that moral gray area. And but they have their own code of honor, though, and that's the other thing that comes into play as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than, I would equate them, if we were talking in realistic terms, I would equate bounty hunters to mercenaries.
Yeah.
You have governments that hire mercenaries because they're outside of the government, so you can officially say, like, hey, if you guys get captured, we know nothing, and you don't bear any insignia that shows that you're identified with the U.S. or Israel, China, Russia, wherever. And you can go do things without all the red tape. And
because a lot of times it's not even, because a lot of times people look at it as, well, it's outside the law. The government by law can't do this, so they get a mercenary to do it. That's not always the case. Sometimes it's perfectly within the government's rights to do it, but like you said, there's a lot of bureaucracy, approval. I mean, if you need to get it done, you need to get it done. So
we may not have the time. Like the time frame is like, okay, this is going to happen in the next 36 hours. We don't have 4 or 6 weeks for it to go through Congress and then get voted upon. Like, we have to act now. But if we do it as the government, then we're violating our own law. Whereas we get the mercenaries to do it, then, this incident kind of quietly went away. We don't have to worry about it anymore. And no one has to be the wiser. So, there's a whole lot of different, like you said, layers to it.
Which is unusual in this series. I mean, usually it's either symbolic and
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to like reel it back a little. I mean, you could say that too of the whole Star Wars universe, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, that's the cool thing about it. When people talk about, being grounded, doing different things, I think that's why The Mandalorian was so widely, acclaimed, is because you can tell almost, humanistic stories in the Star Wars universe without, I mean, of course, once you introduce Baby Yoda into the equation, there goes that. But outside of that, it's like, okay, you got this guy. It's no different than watching Dog the Bounty Hunter. It's just in space now.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
And to that end, by the way, I mean, just drop a little nugget of news. Because there has been a lot of Star Wars news that has come out lately.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're somewhat trapped in this cycle of reviewing Visions for the next, 4 or 5 month, basically. But outside of course, our Wednesday show. But because this is coming up, apparently, everybody thought The Mandalorian and Grogu was in lieu of Season 4, but it turns out Season 4 has nothing to do with this. Like, Season 4, as Favreau said, is sitting on his desk. Like, it's written, it's basically more or less ready to go. And it was not done where they figured, okay, it's not going to go anywhere as a series. Let's just make a movie and cap it off. That's not the case. So we'll have to see where that goes. That's what we were
wondering, too. Yeah, because we were all kind of wondering, is this the conclusion of The Mandalorian, or is this...
No, and I guess it falls
segue
in like a season 3.5 or something.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see. Who knows? It might even take place earlier than that. But, getting back to this, the other thing that I really loved is the fact that there was a more character-driven storyline in this. Because, again, what Visions has been for the most part, and it just depends on the studio. Because, again, there were a lot of stories last season. I think that's the reason why we like last season so much, is because there really were some compelling stories that were being told. On the other hand, there's also ones that are a little bit more abstract. And you're pretty much sitting there wondering what you're watching. You're just kind of like, hey, a lot of beautiful images, but I have no idea what this is. Like, I have zero clue what I'm watching right
now. Yeah. I mean, I think that even with this particular episode, like you cover a lot of different bases where you have like you said, the moral turpitude, that our characters are going through. Um, you get that nefarious, like, oh, hey, I'm Mr. Benevolent, but really I'm a snake, vibe. You get a somewhat bipolar droid. Like, just there's some themes that, and you brought it up earlier, that it's not silly though. It's not done in a goofy, silly way, but there were some cool things, like even this shot that you have. This is like when they kick down that door, and it
Yep.
kind of looks like the buddy cop, the old buddy
Yeah.
cop stuff from like
Right.
Lethal
Like a
Weapon
lethal
or something.
weapon or something.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. Or the fact that Seven kind of reminds you of Black Widow from the Avengers, like just the way that she moves and how she kind of,
Right.
her whole backstory is kind of very Black Widow-ish. Just the fact that she was a slave. Um, she had this whole almost like in the story of Black Widow, when she kind of was captured and was trained, and just there's a lot of different nuances and a lot of different uh things on the plate for people who like different tastes. It's almost kind of like you go to Applebee's and you get like the sampler plate. This is kind of what a sampler plate in Star Wars would look like, because you have a bunch of different things that you can
And you know what? The chili
taste.
sampler plate would be really good.
You said what?
The chili sampler plate. I'm just.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. So
Making myself hungry here. But I mean, the other thing of note, and this is something that I think goes along to what you're talking about too, is the fact that another difference is the villain's not an Imperial or
yeah,
a Sith or something. I mean, it's like a
hmm
corporate guy.
it's
I mean,
kind of a
like a
corporate shark
business guy.
gangster.
Yeah, right. I mean,
Yeah,
this could very easily. I mean, you talk about a buddy cop thing. This could very easily. This whole plot could be ported over into basically that kind of a thing. You could tell more earthbound story with this, and
yeah.
it's. I think that that's one of the reasons why it had such a wide appeal, and they're not losing you in this whole surrealistic, abstract imagery. It's fairly easy to follow,
hmm
and it plays out very much like that. And due to its complexity, and due to the fact that you have these two characters, um, in IV and Seven, where it's like you basically have this dynamic where there's complexity even within the relationship. It's not just a Han Solo Chewbacca kind of thing.
Well,
Or
yeah, and
like kind of like a Lando L3 thing where it's a little bit of a, sniping back and forth, and you know, some
right,
little like, kind of love-hate thing almost. It's very
yeah.
complex in how it weaves in and out along with the storyline. I mean, even just the dynamic between those two characters is fascinating.
Well, there's somewhat of a, and there's a precedence that Star Wars started off with. The first film that we get out of Star Wars, I mean, even though it wasn't called this initially, I get that, but it was A New Hope.
Mhm.
And hope has always kind of been one of those things that's permeated throughout the Star Wars universe. And the way that they capture hope is more humanized, as opposed to, oh, it's the will of the Force. It's a destiny type thing. It's more like, you know what, I just want to be a better person. And that's one of those things, like when we're talking about, like when I brought it up maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago, where everybody doesn't have to be um, force sensitive, so to speak, or everyone doesn't have to necessarily, you know, hear the will of the force, or yeah, I felt something. Like, it doesn't have to necessarily be that. I mean, you could always make the argument that maybe that's why she was making those choices, because the force was, yeah, you could, or it could just be like, you know what, I just made a rational decision just using my own intellect and came to this conclusion.
Well, and I think what you're hitting on is actually a broader theme of this season. It seems to be more about choices
Yeah,
and destiny. A
exactly.
lot of times the Skywalker saga, it's destiny, and I mean there are choices that are made certainly, but I mean this is almost hope through choices in a weird sort of way.
hmm
I mean, it's very much, I think, on the nose in this particular episode. But I mean, even in the previous 3, that's pretty much what it comes down to. And I'm going to be curious to see if that continues. Because again, we're only 4 episodes out of 9. So we're like, I guess you could say we're halfway through the series.
Yeah, just about.
Pretty much. I mean, you'd have to go like half into the
Half of an
next
episode.
to actually, mathematically make it work, right? But I mean,
Correct.
we're pretty much halfway through this series. And once you get to that halfway mark, you could say, okay, this is the tone, and this is basically like you could glean more information from it. You and I, and this is something that we've done a lot when we review these type of shows. And that is, we always caution everybody, because a lot of times they don't do what they did with this. A lot of times they'll drop the first 2 or 3 episodes, and then it becomes a weekly thing. And especially in that, you always have to be very, very careful about rating the entire series based on the first few episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it's when you're getting into a little bit over the halfway mark, actually, that you can start to really pinpoint certain themes, certain character arcs, certain, plots, and just the overall story arc, maybe. Then you can start to maybe rank those a little bit. And really, you can't do it until you have everything in totality if you're going to be fair about it. But with this, obviously, it's not working that way, because this is more of like an anthology kind of thing, right? Every episode, I mean, obviously some of these have been sequels. Like last week's episode was a sequel to an earlier episode from another season or volume. But pretty much these are standalone little nuggets of Star Wars story, which is nice. But I really do sincerely hope that they actually do more with these 2 particular characters, because like I said, I mean, if they came out with a series with just these 2, I would actually watch it.
Oh, yeah.
Like enthusiastically. Like I wouldn't, where it's not like, well, we've done the other seasons, I guess this new season of Visions we got to. But I mean, I probably have a much warmer feeling about Visions this season than I did even the last one.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of wondering, and you bring up a point that we're, like you said, we're pretty much at the halfway point of this season or volume. And there's been a theme. And I wonder if that's intentional, in the sense of the studios trying to do that. Like that was kind of their charge, to put together like when they, petition Star Wars, or Star Wars goes out to these, studios and say, hey, we want you guys to create something. Here are your parameters. For season 3, we're trying to focus on hope.
Right.
Not destiny. Like, are they telling them that? Or are these studios creating this stuff on their own? And as Star Wars is looking at them, or Lucasfilm was looking at them, they're like, okay, well, hey, let's create a theme out of this. I see a lot of these people are kind of doing, this is a theme that I'm saying, let's just make volume 3 about hope, and let's just string them all together. Just curious.
No, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, honestly, I almost wish that at the beginning, and maybe we should do this at the beginning of each of these volumes, is that you find out what the parameters are, because that leads into other questions like, well, how many do the studios go to them, or do they say, okay, well, we're going to do like 9 different episodes, let's reach out to a bunch of studios and see what they did. Now, I remember from the first season or volume, they did actually go to certain studios and got a pitch from them and approved it or whatever. But of course, as time goes on, now there's more cohesion between this stuff. The first season, it's pretty much whatever you want it to be. But once you establish that, now I know for the theme, the overall thing for the second volume was, hey, let's reach out beyond just Japanese studios and let's go all over the world and tell anime from, like Brazil
Bulgaria
and
or something.
India and, some of these other ones like the UK, like some of these other countries that obviously ended up doing episodes. So it is interesting to me to see, like you said, what are the parameters even for each season? Are they reaching out to these studios? It would also be good to even research, like, well, did each studio only do one episode? Was there any studio that did more than one episode for that season? Like you said, was there a directive? I don't think, at least I remember reading for volume 1, like when this whole thing first started, I don't think they got any real directive. It was pretty much Star Wars Sandbox. Maybe they pitched the stories or whatever and got approval, but then they just went and made whatever it was they wanted. They gave them pretty free reign. I don't think that Vision seemed to me to be more of an experiment than some sort of a concrete project that they're going to micromanage like they do some of the other stuff. And honestly, I think it goes back to what you had said pretty much every season that we do this show, including this one, is that this one's going to pretty much appeal to a very specific audience. It's like you pretty much are going to be appealing to anime fans. This isn't necessarily a Star Wars project because none of this is even canon, really.
Right.
So it's sort of like, all right, well, I guess do whatever you want. Just don't make any Star Wars hentai or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, that might be. Although, if they did do that, I'm sure
that's
that
a different
more
type
people.
Of vision.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, man. Those ratings will go up.
They would go up majorly, yeah.
Along with a few other things, but
it's like, wow, Visions is actually more watched than The Mandalorian.
Right. Visions After Dark.
Yeah, I guess but I mean, that's probably honestly the only real directive they probably got. Like, look, guys, let's just keep this. Let's keep it PG here.
Let's keep it wholesome.
Right. Because, like you said, there's a lot of this where it almost seemed like Resistance was the more canonized version of Visions. It had very much the same type of 2D animation. But that's another thing about this episode too, though. If you when you really watch it, it basically has a similar vibe to the last episode, but it was even more cinematic, I think. Where even though you were getting some of the 2D, there was a little bit of that 3D feel to the 2D animation in this, which I was, all about.
Yeah, definitely. It kind of had. I'm trying to think of a good comparison. I don't know if I want to say it's not like Clone Wars, but.
What are you talking about as far as
animation wise? I'm trying to figure out if there's another franchise or another, where, because it kind of, in a way, it kind of reminded me of maybe some of the rehash of the Justice League animated series.
Yeah, the newer version.
Yeah, the newer version of that's what I was trying to figure out. It's not Batman the animated series because that's more closer to 2D, but the Justice League kind of had more of a 3D-ish, somewhat image to it a little bit. So yeah, but I mean, I like I said, I enjoyed the animation too, and that's also what makes this enjoyable. Context, animation that isn't too wonky.
I mean, again,
story.
It really depends. It's going to come down to, does the animation take you out of the story or not?
Yeah.
And
sometimes that can be very distracting.
It can be. I mean, the only reason why some of it's like, it just depends if the story goes along with the animation. I always say it's like, when you're in bands and everything, the visual presentation should be really supporting the music. I mean, obviously a pop band is going to have different visuals than, like a metal band or a country band or anything like that. And it's like, sometimes it could be artsy to mix and match a little bit that way. But more times than not, you're going to find it to be distracting and taking you out of the experience. I mean, it should really be an enhancement. When whatever you're listening to, whatever you're seeing should enhance what you're listening to. And I think that's really the same way with the animation. The animation should actually go along with the story, so you basically have a cohesive style. Now, if you don't like the story or you don't like the animation, like the animation may very well fit the storyline, but you just might not like it, and so therefore it takes you out of it, and it ruins your enjoyment that you could possibly have. So that's why there is a little bit of a thing. Like, the example is the Ronin stuff, right? The Ronin stuff is it's like that pencil sketchy type of a style.
Yeah, it's like a sketch pad thing.
It is. And I mean, it's very much a classic style. I mean, not just in anime. I mean, it's just a classic style of animation. Now, it fits the Ronin story very well, actually. But if you're not a fan of that style, it's going to take you out of it. And so, consequently, you might think the Ronin character is amazing, and you might think that the storyline to the 2 Ronin episodes were fantastic, but you're just like, I just can't get past the animation. Similarly, the opposite can happen. You might be a huge fan of the animation, but the story is just dull. And it's kind of like, all right, this is beautiful nothingness. And same thing, and it's almost like that with movies too, right? Where the cinematography is like breathtaking and the story sucks. A lot of people kind of had that criticism about the sequel trilogy, actually. I mean, I can always tell where somebody lands with the sequel trilogy when I say, yeah, what'd you think of like The Rise of Skywalker or something? And they'd be like, oh man, the cinematography was amazing. In fact, I think that's what Lucas said about The Force Awakens. He got back, well, the cinematography was breathtaking. It's like,
Yeah, when that's your first.
Then that's your
thought.
first, and that's kind of, and you put a period, not a comma, after that sentence.
Right.
Like, that's pretty much all you're going to say.
Yeah.
Then, yeah, that's telling you something.
It's
like,
an
okay.
ugly baby, like, oh, that's some cute clothes.
Right.
Like your baby's ugly.
Yeah. What an adorable shirt, It's,
yeah, exactly.
And that's basically it. It's like, okay, you're trying to enhance the positives, and for you, there might not be too many positives. So
Right.
you're going in that direction. And that's, I think, a lot of times what happens too with something like this is that you have very much of a classic type of an anime that's really rooted, right? Because you do get offshoots of it. I mean, there are tons of different type of anime projects with completely different animation styles. But there's that classic style that a lot of people think of, when they think of animes, particularly Japanese anime. And that's where I think is sort of like the baseline for the fandom. But if you're not an anime fan, now you're not going to be basing it on that. You're going to be basing it on, do I like the story, and does the animation enhance the story for me, or does it take me out of it?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've always struggled. I never really got into anime, quite frankly. It's because a lot of the animation really took me out of it. Like I couldn't even follow. I didn't even want to watch the story or listen for the story because animation was just too like. I'll give you one. The animation where like when people are talking and like their mouths are like these huge holes.
Oh yeah,
and they're just like, yeah,
I don't like that either.
I can't. Yeah, I can't. Can't.
I
watch
see
it.
that, I turn it off immediately.
Exactly, and that's my thing, and that's why I've never gotten into a lot of anime. And I start to key in on that, like, oh, this is kind of an anime thing. Yeah.
Well, and I think that that's the problem that anime has in general, is the fact that you almost need, because that's what happened with me. I had somebody that guided me in and sort of knew the kind of things that I liked and guided me towards those projects.
Yeah.
It's almost like jazz. I remember when I used to go into the, back in the day, things called record stores, where they actually sold vinyl albums and CDs and all that.
Say it ain't so.
And I remember, you would go into the jazz section, and there's so many different kinds of jazz, really, even within the specific subgenres. And, the nice thing about rock bands, especially metal bands, is you can almost tell what kind of stuff you're going to get from the album cover.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the album cover, it's not 100% accurate, but for the most part, you're in the ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
But jazz, it's like everybody's just sitting next to their instrument in a suit or something. Like, you have no idea, other than what instrument is going to be prominent because it's what the artist plays. You have no idea. And so consequently, there might be a form of jazz that you like, but you'll never know. Like, you'll never be able to figure it out unless somebody guides you through that. Starts saying, "Hey, what kind of stuff is it that you like? Okay, well, try these artists."
Yeah.
Okay, then you have that as a foundation, and now you can move and start to expand a little bit. Maybe get the first 5, 6, 7 artists, almost kind of like how Spotify or Pandora, any of those work. They look at what you're listening to, and then they just start feeding you songs that are kind of have that same feel. And it's like, hey, you might like this. And anime is very much the same way. You have to have somebody, you have to, okay, what kinds of things do you like? Okay, try this.
Yeah.
And
very much so.
Otherwise, if you accidentally watch the wrong thing, you're going to be like, well, this just sucks. Anime is horrible. Like, that's what it is, and it's awful.
But what I will say about Visions, though, and to your point, the cool thing about Visions is that it's kind of doing that for people. Because the fact that you're introducing them so many different, if you can hang with it, right?
Yes.
That's the key. If you can hang with it to the end, it at least will show you what you like and what you don't like. And it's like, okay, like someone watched this episode and said, like, man, that was a really cool episode. I mean, I like this is not too bad. Like, if that's their first, then now I kind of know. All right, now if I show you the Ronin episode, you're like, I don't know. It was like, what was all that crap? And it looks like a bunch of.
Or it might be the opposite.
Yeah, or the opposite, right? But that's what I'm saying. Like, or they can enjoy that too. So it's like, now, okay, well, you may have more of a expanded palette for this. You might like more anime than, some people might have a very chicken nuggets thing.
Yeah,
people
what you're saying
is
basically it's like with the anime they're exposed to, it's like, okay, I like this and I only like this. Mm-hmm. So just give me the projects that fit within this very narrow window. Yes, the chicken nugget.
Yeah,
versus somebody.
You go to a steakhouse. Oh, what do you have? Chicken nuggets at a steakhouse? Yep, that's what I want. Because I know,
sir, what would you
can't mess that.
Let me get the grilled cheese sandwich, please.
Exactly. Like, you can't mess this up for me.
Right.
Versus, expanding the palette a little bit and
right, where it's basically it. Now, it's funny because Dom, returns. Basically said, it's still making shows, it's time to let it go. And essentially, I think that the problem is that Star Wars as a franchise is kind of at that point where they've had enough misses, and even stuff that's been good overall has had enough problems that they're going to start to lose even the hardcore fans pretty soon. Like, their next couple of projects are really going to determine whether this franchise survives.
Yeah.
Or, it'll always be there just based on the strength of the original trilogy and maybe any of the George Lucas stuff. But I think that it'll go down into this, like, footnote, right? Where it has its core fans, but it's not a cultural phenomenon anymore. It's not something that's relevant.
Or you're going to have to wait another significant amount of time to reactivate it again to see
Yeah.
and is going to have to come back with um, something new and something fresh that's almost as captivating as this, as the original trilogy. And
Well, because
that's the funny thing about culture is that there are some things that end up being timeless. There are some things that can go around. It was a hit, dies off, and then comes back again, and it's like, wow, a whole new generation. This is like, man, this is awesome. Like,
right, they
and we're just, and,
rediscover it.
yeah,
And,
they rediscover it, and it's like taking it to new heights. And the easiest way I can say is like fashion right now. So I've noticed that a lot of the younger generation, like the kids who are in high school, like Dom, and people maybe in
oh,
their early.
Dom's not in high school anymore.
Is he graduated already?
Oh, yeah, he
Jeez,
started college this year.
yikes.
Yeah.
Well,
Surprised he has time to write it still. In fact, he even
I know.
says, start the petition to boycott all things Star Wars. Well, he is, the holidays are coming up, right? He's probably off this week.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, you're right though. This is the kind of thing that's starting to happen. The
Hmm.
biggest problem is this is the first generation where Star Wars is not culturally relevant to them.
Hmm.
Because every generation since it started,
Yeah.
since it first captivated me. And look, there were people that thought Star Wars was stupid even, when it first came out. But it became enough of a cultural phenomenon that, it didn't matter. In fact, it was one of those, if you didn't like Star Wars, you were kind of weird.
Hmm.
Now it's almost like if you do like Star Wars. But look, as long as, Leslie Headland did this interview um like a few days ago or maybe last week or something where, she's attributing the failure of the Acolyte to all these fascists and racists that are out there, and it's just like, no,
No, no, no.
perhaps
You
it
suck.
was the writing and the
Perhaps you suck.
execution. And, maybe people are just responding to that and the fact that it wasn't really what Star Wars was about at all. And you accidentally wrote a couple of good characters. That's
Because you
the
suck.
problem. And the
It's
problem
like,
is, unless these people who are making these projects start to realize that and stop blaming it on these other factors that are quite frankly imaginary, then it's never going to get out of its bubble. And then it goes to what I think your point is, to where maybe it's got to like be dormant for a while and then come back, again. And now I'm almost wondering really if it really needs to be in the hands of somebody other than Disney, because it's funny how, attitudes can change, right? I mean, I remember when I first heard that Disney had bought Star Wars, I was like, well,
hmm.
finally, we got a studio that can totally handle this. you know, they've got a lot of resources. They're going to put all this stuff into it. And now you get
Hmm.
people that are excited because, it popped up again where people are like, hey, George Lucas is eyeing the possibility of making another Star Wars project again, which honestly would not surprise me, because he's got to be thinking in certain terms. Like, sure, in a lot of interviews, he's like, look, I moved on. I gave up that stuff. It's whatever. It's
Hmm.
their thing now. I'm not worried about it. I got a museum that I just opened. He's basically living his best life. On the other hand, it's a thing that he actually created and became a cultural phenomenon. It's like, look, if it's going to die, let it not die in my lifetime. I mean, it's kind of like, if it's going to die, fine. Let it die like, 50, 100 years from now, like long after I'm gone. But how sad would it be to watch this thing that for like 40 some years was at the top, was like the measure, it was basically the bar by which other franchises were measured, and now
Hmm.
it's being systematically destroyed, all in this guy's lifetime. I mean, if I were him, I would be tempted, like, yeah, you know what? Maybe let me just make another one.
Well, that's the thing, though. It's funny because when you look at it, like it's almost like being a parent. no one, like most parents, don't expect their kids to die before they do.
Right.
And in a way, this is kind of like his child
Yeah,
dying
that's
before
true.
him. You know, and that's the thing is, it's like, I get the fact that, in the 1970s when George Lucas, created Star Wars, we say this all the time. He wasn't setting out to make some revolutionary thing. He just wanted to do something that was similar to Flash Gordon.
Jeez,
So
he
he
didn't
was just
even think
like,
that he'd be able to make a second one,
exactly, like,
much
and he
less
really,
this, other monolithic thing, right?
right. And so he's just like, okay, well, cool. I'll kind of do this. I'll do that. And it's like, he wasn't, even some of the fans, like, he loved the fact that people loved his work. He didn't care if you loved it or not. He loved it.
Right.
So the fact that you got the creator who really didn't care about really the success of this thing now is like, okay, you know what? I care now because you're essentially killing my child. I It feels weird for me not to try to save it in some way.
It
And that's very telling.
just hit me.
Hmm?
He's basically living the plot to Office Space. It's like he doesn't give a crap at all about any of it, and yet, he accidentally makes these billion-dollar franchises
Hmm.
where all these other guys that are, trying their best, maybe have moderate success or whatever, which, that's fine too. But I just think it's funny that, yeah, it just dawned on me. He could care less about any of it, and yet it appealed to everybody. But again,
Hmm.
and we've gone over this time and time again on multiple shows, different subjects, but we always come back to the fact that it's because he dealt with timeless themes and timeless storytelling. And he was more about the
Hmm.
macro and the micro. And that's why it just appealed to a lot of people.
But
And,
also, it was something that was never
well, there was a technological
seen
things too. Yeah, where,
too. So that's the other part about it as
sure.
well, is that, like, it's no different than, like, I would often compare Star Wars to The Matrix because The Matrix was like a concept that, like, okay, a concept of reality. Like, okay, are we really living in the real world, or is this a whole, like, are we in a program? And that's the way it's explained, and then how it's then like, okay, Neo, you're the one. And, of course, the technology of the whole, slow motion, the bullets whizzing past them, and, doing all the stuff that people started dancing like that, but that whole thing was just its own lightning in a bottle that kind of stood the test of time. Now, granted, the first one was really great, and some of the other ones weren't. However, the concept of it, though, was really cool. And I
Yeah.
think that's what drew people, was the concept of it had never really been seen before, along with the technology that now, I think, like I said, with Star Wars, I think it has to lie dormant for a while if you're not going to, if it doesn't become more successful within the next couple of projects, it's probably going to have to lie dormant for a while and then, pop back up 10 years, 15 years later when someone has a better idea on how to present it in a way that's like, oh, either it's fresh, like it's a completely new thing, or they can really recapture the magic of the original trilogy.
Yeah. No, Don basically says the Matrix movies are better than Star Wars. Um,
Yeah, I'm gonna
yeah,
have to disagree with
your
you.
uncle would highly disagree with you, actually.
Yeah, that's
The funny
you're
thing about
insane.
him was, I remember we would, like, the first one we both loved, right? But he and I
Yeah.
both saw the second one and the third one together. The
Yep.
funniest thing about that, it was like, it was almost like a sleeping pill. Like,
Yeah.
he, okay, I think he had been working or something. The second one bored us both to tears. We barely made it through the movie. He was
Hmm.
knocked out. The third one I actually thought was a lot better. Like, it still wasn't as good as the first one, but it was better. Didn't matter. It knocked him out. He was gone within like 10 minutes of the movie starting, which I thought was hilarious. It's like it's a guaranteed. Like, really, who needs a sleeping pill or anything like that when you have the Matrix?
It's like either
movies,
reading
apparently.
or watch the Matrix.
Well, my dad was kind of like that too. Like I started showing him the Harry Potter movies, and I showed him like 3 of them, and it didn't fail. He fell asleep during all 3 of them. And after that, I'm like, all right, I don't think this is working for him. But so that part is sort of funny, but you know, it's one of those deals where Star Wars reached heights that no other franchise really had. And even though there was a couple that, you know, technically, I mean, it's kind of weird because once you'll see certain movies that actually outsold it or whatever until you adjust for inflation. Because once you do that, you know, it's a lot easier to make, you know, a couple $1 billion or whatever on like a $14, $15 movie ticket than it was on a $3 movie ticket. Everybody forgets that.
Right.
And the other thing is you got to look at sustained franchise success. Sure, you have some of the literary ones that are based on books like Lord of the Rings, Chronicles of Narnia, stuff like that. But everybody forgets that Star Wars was born from a film, not a book. Sure, it launched the entire expanded universe, and that became successful. But it's not the same. It's very unique. Even Harry Potter book series. You know, a lot of these other franchises started out as books. Even the Marvel and DC, right? Comic books.
Comic books.
Yeah, they've been around since like the 30s or something. You know, so I mean, Star Wars really is very unique. The only other example would be Star Trek, because that started out as a television show. And then, you know, morphed into the franchise that it was. So you do have, you know, certain things that, you know, you can maybe make some comparisons to, but I don't know. I think with Visions, it's a unique enough project. It sits basically outside of the Star Wars franchise, actually. In fact, if you didn't know anything about Star Wars, you wouldn't even know that Visions was a Star Wars project, other than the fact that it says it at the beginning. Like, you wouldn't know what that was. But if you are a Star Wars fan, you see all the Star Wars influences and the things that, of course, they feature, even though they twist it up a little bit. Like, one of my favorites was it's in the Ronin episodes where they have that whole like old school 1600s samurai thing going, and even their droids reflect that. Like, they're droids, but they still have that, you know, that look.
Old world look.
Yeah. You know, so I mean, there's a lot of different things that are featured in these things that, you know, quite frankly, if you weren't a Star Wars fan, you wouldn't even know the difference. You would just think it was some other invention from the anime studio that was making it. So I'm very much, after this, you know, I thought it was great. I mean, we always give a numbered, like a numbered thing. So what number are you giving this one?
I would give this a solid 8.
Yeah, I'm going 8.5. I loved it. Okay. I don't know. I know we've given. Well, it depends. See, I think the difference between this season and the previous 2 are now we're actually giving like real ratings.
Right.
Before it was kind of like
grading on a curve.
Yeah, we're kind of like, well, you know, for a Visions episode, this is like a 9 or something, because that's what we did. I remember we gave a couple like 9s or something like that. But we were more or less grading on the curve then. This season, Visions has improved to the fact, or maybe that's a poor choice of words. Visions has appealed to us now with these particular stories that we're really giving real ratings at this point. And I mean, I think that's good. Now, of course, Ted gives it an 8. Dom, unsurprisingly, gives it a 0. Although I doubt very seriously. That's the
Yeah.
thing. I don't even think he's watched, honestly. I'd be willing to
Where's-
bet money, which I would not often do. But I would be willing to bet money that he's not watched a single episode. That he's just basing it on his newly
Disdain for
found
Star
hatred
Wars.
for Star Wars, yeah. Which is fine. But yeah, I mean, I think it was a really solid episode. I'm looking forward to the next one. Obviously, next weekend, Sunday, maybe Monday, probably Sunday. Depends on when I get done setting up. This? No, that's not next week. That's a week after. So next Sunday should be cool. I'll look forward to reviewing episode 5. In the meantime, again, got to do another plug. Our special pre-Thanksgiving episode that we always do the night before Thanksgiving, Wednesday night, 8 o'clock. This time, we're talking about our favorite scene from each of the 9 films. I remember I got that messed up horribly. I thought it was like the best scene from each trilogy or something. And while we were doing this live stream last week, I remember you had to sit there and explain to me, no, that's not what it is at all. It's actually from each one. And we should have our 3rd co-host. Right? Every year, like I said, it's usually Dave Cossey. Hasn't been for the last few years. Unfortunately, it's not going to be this year either. But David, y'all know David. We're hoping to get him back on for a return.
Yes.
To his temporary elevation to 3rd co-host for this thing. And it should be interesting because you brought this up too when Kazi was like iffy. Like we didn't get confirmation yet, but there was like a chance.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember you said something that was really interesting. You're like, in a way, if David does it, it might be more interesting because he's a newer fan.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to get like a newer fan perspective.
Yeah, fresher perspective.
Yeah, a little bit fresher perspective because especially when it comes to a favorite scene. And anybody that's watched David's comments in the past, you see how his mind's a little bit different when it comes to Star Wars from a lot of people, but especially from us, right? The more
right.
harder
Seasoned.
core. Yeah.
Yes.
There you go. Seasoned fans. So it should be really interesting because what are his favorite scenes and why?
And why?
I mean, it's, and honestly, look, I am going back and forth. I should get your opinion on this while we're actually doing the stream. I don't know if I necessarily want to really put a lot of thought into it.
No, I think it's more fun. I mean, we're all, holiday season, time for whimsy. Why not? Just
Well, because if you think about it, and this mirrors a lot of what our show's about. It's really about, when you're together with your friends and you just start talking about Star Wars, as one does, right? Yes, I realize how abnormal that sounds. But the thing is, that's kind of what it is. Or, maybe you get together with a bunch of your friends and you start talking about, football. Nobody's like pre-planning what they're going to talk about. Half the time you don't even know you're talking about football until you get there.
mm-hmm.
Right? So it's almost like a spontaneous conversation where you're actually thinking in your mind of the scenes, and then somebody else mentioned something, you're like, oh yeah, what about that one? And then you start discussing it, because otherwise it just ends up becoming almost like a top 5 list.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's more like the other shows where we always try to make the pre-Thanksgiving show even more loose, if you can imagine that, than our normal shows. And that's a lot of, there's prep that goes into our shows, but we don't overly do it like a lot of these more news-based, like show type shows. Really it's more like a conversation. We just bring you guys in on it.
Yep.
With a little bit of a framework. So yeah, I think it's going to be really fun this year, especially if David's able to do it. I'm really looking forward to it. Like I said, the night before Thanksgiving, because, you're going into a holiday, you're in a good mood. It's like, yeah, man, it's cool. We're off work. It should be. I remember last Thanksgiving, actually, I got called in like twice, like on the Friday and Sunday or something. It's like the whole thing was, but the Wednesday was still cool, and I still thought I had the whole weekend off. So I was pretty relaxed. But hopefully you guys are able to join us for that. Again, next week, our regular time, we'll be doing episode 5 of Visions. So with that, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.